Why wake up when the world sleeps? Every single day. Why train alone? Why do the same thing? Again and again. Lap after lap. Day in, day out. Why jump? Why glide? Why slide? Why fall? Why get back up? Why lose? Why win? Why do it? Because if it gets your heart racing, it's worth doing. TVS Racing, engineering goosebumps since 1982.
My daddy is my best friend. He plays with me all the time. But a while back, he couldn't play with me at all. He was sick. Mama told me, "Don't worry, baby. Papa is being cared by the best doctors." Doctor uncle was very sweet. He told me that he was going to give a bigger space in my papa's heart to love me. The nurses over there made Papa smile all the time. One day, they took Papa to a room. Like in Ben 10, there were very big machines. Mama said that Papa will be back home very soon. And in 2 days, Papa was alright. I love you, Daddy.
Some things in life are beyond value. Love, care, and your heart. Apollo Hospitals. Because your heart is priceless.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 2021 edition of the Carpe Diem series powered by TVS Motors. I am Rasif Sheikh Mohammed, and I will be your host for this evening. I would also like to thank Radio Mirchi, our entertainment partner, and NoahFest, our online listening partner. Today, we have a treat for the cricket fans. Before we get started with the interview, I would just like to say that Festember has partnered with Give India, a non-profit organization that aims to provide resources for NGOs all over India via an online donating platform. Through our series, we'll be raising donations for their efforts. The donation link is pinned in the comments and also in the description box, so feel free to contribute as much as you can, as it can create a positive difference in someone's life. Now let's get straight on with the interview. Today, our guest was a household name for us growing up in the 2000s and the early 2010s. He has won 5 consecutive ICC Umpire of the Year awards from 2004 till 2008 and is considered one of, or if not the greatest umpire to have played a game. We have with us Simon Taufel. Simon, I would firstly like to thank you for taking time to have this talk with us. It's a huge privilege for us and our team.
Namaste, Dhanyawad, Nandre, and nice to be with you, Rashid.
Thank you, Simon. So, firstly, I would like to ask that you've had a long, successful umpiring career, but You started umpiring like at quite a young age. So what was your decision behind being an umpire and starting it that early?
A bit of luck, to be honest. Look, out of misfortune with a back injury came an opportunity to attend an umpiring course with a fellow fast bowling mate of mine, and he invited me to join him at an umpires course. And we sat the 4 nights. We did the 10 hours of study and review of the laws of cricket. And probably like most of your audience, they probably think they know the laws of cricket, but they really don't. And certainly I didn't. And luckily, when we did the examination, I scored more than 85%, which was the pass mark. And having achieved that and going to university at the time myself, doing a Bachelor of Business degree, I needed some extra money, some extra pocket money to be able, you know what students are like, mate. We need some extra money to be able to buy the coffees and to go out occasionally. And I took up umpiring after passing that course, really just as a hobby and a part-time job. So one of the pieces of advice I'd give everyone listening to this would be, think twice before you say no to an opportunity, because you just don't know where it might lead you.
Yeah, it's a great piece of advice there. So, like you were telling us that you had been a fast bowler in your early days, and because of the back injury, it's what led you to be the umpire. So, do you think that the experiences of being a fast bowler helped you make those decisions while being an umpire? Like you were able to see the game through a fast bowler's view?
If you ask me whether I gave bowlers more decisions, probably not. Although I think in retrospective, I probably gave more front foot LBWs than a lot of my older colleagues had, because, you know, there was this old adage in cricket that you always gave the benefit of doubt to the batter when they were on the front foot. But of course, as technology showed us, in particular ball tracking showed us, you know, if you saw enough evidence of the ball pitching in line and going straight on, then I felt very comfortable in giving those decisions. But to your question, I think having played the game a little bit, and I don't profess to have played it at the highest level, but I think it gave me some empathy for what the players were doing, with what they were going through, and how important the game is to them. And to respect the fact that I had to give my best performance to do the right thing by the players, because ultimately it's a player's game. It's not an umpire's game, it's a player's game. And I think empathy and being able to show some understanding and then make good cricket decisions, not just good umpiring decisions, but good cricket decisions, and deliver what the game expected, probably helped me a little bit early on.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. And I guess that you started umpiring like quite a long time ago, like before almost most of us in this call were even born. So nowadays, like we see that there's a lot of technology involved with DRS and stuff. So how difficult and different do you think the decision making was during the time when there was nothing called DRS, or there wasn't technology as much? Like, how were you doing it that time? How has it changed throughout the years?
Yeah, look, it's a hard question to answer, because I think broadcasting itself has come a long way, just like mobile phones, just like the internet, just like social media. You know, it evolves almost every day. It's quite rapid in its development. But there's always been an element of scrutiny to sport, and cricket in particular. And, you know, when you've got 1.3 billion people in India watching the T20 World Cup effectively, and all wanting Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri to go out on top, you know, there's a lot of pressure to perform, not just on the players and coaches, but also on the umpires. But, you know, for umpires, people expect us to start out perfect when we begin our craft and then get better. You know, so we're not allowed to get anything wrong. The players can, you know, they can make mistakes and come back and play a second innings or just have another game. But for umpires, we're not allowed to make mistakes. So I think scrutiny has really increased as technology's improved. You know, you look at the 31 cameras at the ground, the Hawkeye replays, the Snicko, the hotspot, and the 3 experts in the commentary position who give us, you know, their view. And of course, they're always right. Commentators are never wrong. But to your question, pre-DRS, was different because you'd make your decision and it wasn't really going to hit you until you walked off at the end of the session or at the end of the day. With DRS, you're seeing your decision dissected on the big replay screen in front of thousands of people and millions of people, and then to be able to put your arms across your chest and admit that you've made a mistake publicly, and then try and move on to the next decision, that's the point of difference. So imagine if you were doing an exam, an engineering exam, and instead of doing all the questions and putting all your answers down, your lecturer assessor was actually stopping you after every question and then marking that question and telling you that you got it wrong, and then you'd have to try and start the next question and do your best to get that one right. It's completely different, isn't it? So it's how you handle that feedback and pressure that's the real difference.
Yeah, exactly. I think for someone like us, especially with the example you're given, I feel like it would be really tough after seeing, oh, you got it wrong and you got to repeat it for the next one. So how is the mental space, like how do you prepare for yourself mentally? Because like you said, when someone's giving a wrong decision, I have 1.3 billion people watching you. How do you maintain to keep that focus on towards the next decision or throughout the next of the game?
Well, this is why, Rashid, I talk about transferable skills. I talk about the soft skills of what we do. And the best advice I can give you and the best way I can answer that is really just to try and keep it simple and focus on the process. You know, in sport, we find ourselves in that performance zone when we're not worried about what we've just done and we're not worried about what we're going to do next. We really connect with the moment. And so again, I go back to that examination analogy that I just used before. And if you slow down and if you breathe and you read the question and you answer the question and then you move on, you remain as connected with the moment. And it's just like me in my job as umpiring. You know, if I'm able just to focus on my routines, my positive pre-talk self-trigger, watch the ball and keep my process really simple and really strong, and I stay mentally in the moment, I'm more than likely going to be able to make the correct decision. And if I don't, I've got to practice not thinking about what the commentators are going to say, not thinking about what's in the newspaper tomorrow, and not thinking about in the past about, well, how did I get that decision wrong? If I can try and practice that mental toughness of and discipline, that mental discipline of staying connected to the here and now, I'm more likely to get it right. There's no guarantee I will, but you know, performance and doing well is about minimizing risk and about high percentage routines and process. So for me, it's about working out what does that look like and trying to repeat that ball after ball and not get distracted by the past or the future.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice there, especially for us with exams coming on soon. We'll definitely keep that in mind.
Just breathe, read the question, slow down, answer the question, do your best. And you can only do your best and not worry about what might happen later, because it might not. Most of the things that we worry about don't actually happen.
Yeah, it's great advice. So I think like we talked about the mental aspect of the game, but something that not a lot of people understand, that when you're an umpire as well, you also have to train yourself physically, because people keep talking about the players being there in these harsh conditions. Like now with the IPL and the T20 World Cup being in UAE, it's really hot and humid here. But so how do umpires physically train themselves? Because they also have to be on the field. Like we see the players can go out and come in at times when they're feeling physically down. So how do the umpires, what is the fitness like for the umpires?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for me, look, umpiring is mainly mental. Nearly everything that we do is about, you know, that mental toughness, that mental discipline that we've just talked about. However, if you're physically fit, and you don't have to be a triathlete here, but you have to have strong stomach muscles, you have to have good back strength, really good flexibility in your legs and agility. So you don't need to be a triathlete, but you'd have to be physically fit. And the reason I say that is because if your body is aching, if your body is tired, if if you're carrying an injury, that becomes a distraction. And if you're thinking about soreness in your legs, soreness in your back, if you're physically fatigued, if you don't get enough sleep, and fitness for me is about well-being. And I don't think that we focus enough on sleep and rest and recovery, because as you've alluded to, our workloads are fairly high. We're constantly traveling, through many different time zones, different types of heat, cold, wind, sun, rain. We need to be as relaxed as we can, but our well-being, whether it's hydration, just drinking enough water and fluid so that we don't feel mentally fatigued, because that can have a real impact. We need to be eating right foods, but they're not umpiring skills. They're what I call life skills. And it's almost like, again, if you go into the exam feeling too tired, not having eaten properly, feeling quite low on energy, not having the right posture when you sit, those feelings become distracting and they take you away from focusing on what you have to do.
Yeah, definitely. So do you feel that at times, like, the adrenaline also helps you, like when you're on the pitch and you're seeing the crowds, the cricket, like as a cricket fan, you're there watching, you have the best seat in the game almost. So does that also help you power through the day?
Oh, it certainly does. Look, I've done test matches in front of 100,000 people, and I've done test matches in front of 100 people. And having the energy from a crowd helps you get that right level of arousal to really lift your performance to the point where you acknowledge that this is an important thing that you're doing. And sometimes, so nerves are good. So for me, having a few butterflies in the stomach is really quite good, because it helps me recognize that I care about what I'm about to do. If I'm not feeling nervous, if I'm not feeling the energy, and I'm just going through the motions, that's when bad things can happen, because you tend to relax too much and you don't care about the impact of what you're about to do. So too many nerves is bad, not enough is equally as bad. So feeling that sense of occasion, feeling that energy of the crowd and the importance of what you're doing really does help bring out the best in you.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess, like how I was saying, being in these, you've been part of like a lot of these iconic moments as well. Like one of my favorite cricketing moments growing up was watching Yuvraj hitting those 6 sixes in the ICC T20 World Cup. So being as an umpire, you had like the first-hand view of what was happening. Like what do you remember from that match? The feeling of the crowd and the players that were there.
Yeah, look, there's obviously that sense of occasion that we've just talked about, but also too, it's a real privilege to be part of history, and I don't take for granted the opportunity that you get presented with when you participate at sport at the elite level. So first and foremost, to be successful, I think takes this characteristic of humility. And don't think that you know it all, and don't expect that things are always going to work out. So working hard in preparation and trying to really be humble around and respectful of the opportunity is important. Yuvraj Singh, Andrew Flintoff, Stuart Broad on that occasion, we all remember it now, and you can look back on it and say, gee, wow, what an event. And it's always nice to be part of history, as I said. But at the time, I'm focusing on one ball at a time. Now, for me, I look back at that over and I say, gee, it was nice to be part of that. However, there's a part of me that said that maybe one of those deliveries could have been called a waist high full toss. And should there have been a seventh ball in the over? Another part of me feels a bit sorry for Stuart Broad, because no bowler, and being a former bowler, you don't want to get hit for 6 sixes. And England lost the game, and it was a great occasion, India going through to ultimately win the tournament. But you don't think like that at the time. So you break it down into bite-sized chunks and you just try to do your best one ball at a time. But it's very humbling, and it's quite gratifying to have people like you ask me those sorts of questions. And it's something that Yuvraj and I and Stuart Broad will share forever now, won't we?
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic to hear that. Even though like it was such a big moment that you're going through one ball at a time and focusing properly, that's definitely the way to play the game. So we prepared a short fun segment for you. So it's basically called Guess Who. So we are going to be showing you some distorted, blurred pictures of umpires and some previous cricketers that you have played with. So
Okay.
basically, we just want to see, we're going to show you the blurred image and just want you to guess who they are.
Okay.
So as you can see, there's six.
I'll try and get through the over if I can. 6 balls. 6 balls.
Yes, exactly, like six balls. So first person that we have here is
Alim Bai. Yes.
yeah, exactly. Alim Dar. And yeah, moving on to the next one.
That looks like Billy Bowden.
Billy Bowden, and is that going to be correct? Yes,
I
it is
reckon,
obviously.
I reckon that's Brenda Saywag behind him, by the way. Do I get extra points for that?
You can, but I actually think that's Suresh Raina at the back.
Okay, all right. I should have kept my mouth shut.
Yeah. So moving on then.
All right, 2 out of 2 so far. Let's see how we go.
2 right?
Oh, that's not an umpire.
Yeah, this is a different person.
Different.
It's a Sri Lankan captain. To give you a clue.
A Sri Lankan captain. Well, I'm going to probably say Kumar Sangakkara, if that's the case.
Okay, and yes, it's Kumar Sangakkara. You're 3 for 3 right now.
Okay, all right. So you threw me a curveball there. Was that like a no ball or something?
It was a bit of a wide yorker, but I think you got that one as well.
All right.
All right, so moving on to the fourth one.
Ricky Ponting.
Yeah, it's Ricky Ponting. I guess like with Ricky Ponting and some of these cricketers that I told you that they're known for being a lot of passionate towards the game. So when you're there as an umpire and you see them like maybe just positive banter, sledging, just being passionate towards the game, like how do you make sure that you handle all these situations properly?
Look, firstly, every person and every situation is different. And for me, it's about choosing the right option that suits that person and that situation. Ricky, for example, he's a very intelligent person, both intellectually, but also from a game sense. So I cannot lie to Ricky. I cannot stretch the truth. I've got to be very direct. I've got to be very honest, because if I'm not, I'll lose Ricky's respect very, very quickly. The second thing with Ricky, it's about telling him why we're doing something and explaining to him the reasons and the rationale behind that, because just telling him what we're doing is not good enough. He actually needs to understand the logic behind it. So there's an element here that I talk about in my book about managing conflict, which is managing the issue and managing the person. And you need to keep those two things separate, because sometimes, in fact, most of the time, cricketers will want to make it about the person, that they disagree with us because we're doing it wrong or because they just don't like who we are or whatever the case might be. And so I need to keep taking that back to the issue. Yeah, so, but, Ricky's very intelligent. And that's fine.
Yeah, that's I think 100% correct. So you're 4 for 4 right now, just 2 to go.
There we go. Good.
So going on to the fifth one right now.
Well, it looks like Shane Warne to me.
Is it okay? Is it going to be Shane Warne? Yes, it is Shane Warne. 5 for 5 right now. And with Shane Warne, I guess like while growing up, that especially by playing a test match, if you see, or even like with ODI cricket, like 5th day of test match, where there's a lot of rough on the pitch, you see that the ball's just doing a lot of things. pitching somewhere and it's turning a lot. So I always feel like those kind of decisions, like sometimes it turns and just hits the pad, like it's always so difficult to judge like how much has the ball actually. So how do you like try to get those kind of decisions right? Because those ones always seem the toughest for us as viewers as well in the naked eye.
Look, certainly bat pads would be the hardest decision for me in the game as an umpire to make. The second hardest being caught behinds down the leg side. But I always find that umpiring Shane Warne and Matthias Muralitharan or Ravi Ashwin, those sorts of bowlers, I was lucky enough to grow up, and I've got the SCG in the background in my vision there. So I grew up on the SCG umpiring there, which is a pitch that turns quite a bit in Australia. So I think I'm fortunate that I've sort of made a lot of mistakes along the way. But for me, umpiring test bowlers and spinners in particular, it's a great challenge, and I love umpiring the best. And I was very lucky to at least umpire Warnie and Australia a couple of times in test matches. And I remember an Adelaide test where I think on the last day against South Africa, he must have bowled 20 odd overs from my end on the last day. And I got through that day not having made a mistake. And it gives you such confidence to be able to do that with a world-class spinner, as you say, moving the ball both ways. But I'd rather have that challenge of being in the game every ball than umpiring on a flat track and not getting any appeals, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're likely to miss it. And one of the tricks that I did there was I would stand up a little bit further to the stumps when I was officiating spinners, umpiring spinners, because I wanted to be a little bit closer. And physically, if I felt closer to the action, I felt more engaged and more involved and being able to do that. And I enjoyed that challenge. I wanted the ball to come to me. I wanted to make the next decision. And it's about thinking positively about what you're going to do next rather than being driven by fear.
That's a great insight you've gotten there. So you're 5 for 5. This is the last one, the last ball of you. You can say.
Umpires, what are you doing to me, Rashid?
So here we have the last one. We're giving you an umpire here.
Well, I know who this one is, and I hope the audience know who it is too. But it's a female, and it's actually Claire Polisak from New South Wales.
Okay, this is for 6 for 6. Is it Claire? Yes, it is. So that's 6 for 6 for you. So, do you have any words to say about Claire? Like, she's the first woman to umpire men's cricket matches. How do you feel that the game's progressing now that we're going?
Yeah, look, I think it's really important that the game does what it can to be more inclusive, to really offer pathway opportunities, and to see more women both playing, umpiring, scoring, coaching, being part of our game. And we've got to appeal to 50-odd% of the population to grow our game and to really ensure that cricket is a game for everyone, not just for males. Now, Claire, look, she is a role model. She's a trailblazer. Not only is she a very fine umpire, but she does a lot of work here in New South Wales, Australia, to recruit, train, and develop female umpires. So she's actually employed by the New South Wales Cricket Association to do just that. And she does it in a way that is very humble, is very respectful, and quite enjoyable. And she's a very hard worker in this space too. And so for me, I think she's creating a lot of opportunities for women to be involved in umpiring, and I think she deserves a lot of credit for that. So she's walking the talk, she's leading by example, and she's a wonderful ambassador and role model for female officiating.
Yeah, that's obviously wonderful to see for us as well. Like going ahead, that we can see a lot of diversity in the game and seeing a lot of female umpires come up. So,
well, and part of the world too, you've got a couple of really talented female match referees as well.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's wonderful to see all that, to see how everything's evolving as we move on to the next generation. So you got 6 for 6 then. I think you've done what Yuvraj had done in that over.
Well, mate, I don't like making mistakes. So I like getting everything right as much as I can.
So we've clearly definitely seen that.
Winning is about finding the perfect racing line with your eyes closed. Making split-second decisions based on instinct. CVS Apache RR310 with ride modes and smart connect. Crafted to overcome, crafted to outperform.
So I guess then you can go on to the next question. Like, you have been a part of the IPL when it came about, that like till 2011, 2012. So at the time, how did you find the experience? Like, this was a new thing that had come up, and there were a lot of hype about it. And so how was the feeling of being a part of the IPL and officiating over there?
Look, the word I'd use is wow. You know, wow from crowds, wow from the amount of excitement and engagement and focus, but also wow for the amount of distraction. So when I first started IPL, you know, there were lots of after parties and things that were going on after matches, and lots of potential distractions for us as umpires as well. And was almost like it was a Bollywood show that had a game of cricket somewhere in there in the middle. You know, so it was almost, as we know, it's a mix of Bollywood and cricket, but it was almost like here was 3 hours of entertainment, but there was a cricket match in there somewhere. And for me, it was almost a challenge to keep the integrity of cricket, the integrity of umpiring at the forefront, because lots of people wanted to go down different directions and have other forms of entertainment. And I think that was really challenging for me, was to really just focus on what I had to do and to remember that it's still a game of cricket here, and to make sure that we do the right thing by the game.
Yeah, I think like you're definitely right with the integrity of the game that you mentioned. One thing I guess the IPL had also started with the IPL, we had seen, was the financial fair play award for each team that was given after the match. But what I guess we've always wanted to know is, what do you judge for the criteria for the score of the game? Like, we see some people get 10s, 9s, 8s. So can you just give us an insight? And when you're there, what do you see as a financial fair play? Like, how do you judge the teams?
Yeah, look, for me, I mean, I tend to work backwards. I tend to give every team 10 out of 10 and then find it reasons to deduct points, you know. And so it wasn't someone working their way up to a score of 10, but, you know, I think the game needs to be played. How would I describe this? I'm looking for players to accept the opportunity and take responsibility for their game. You know, I only watched a little bit of, say, the game last night between New Zealand and England, you know, and you see a New Zealand batsman not take a run because he interfered with the England bowler. And you say to yourself, well, there's no need for an umpire to get involved in that, because the players have decided how they want the game to be played. And so when I talk about player behaviour, I'm looking for the captain and the players to take responsibility for managing their own behaviour, rather than the umpires having to step in and apply a code of conduct. So when I look at the spirit of cricket and those points, I'm looking for, you know, did the players signal 4 runs or 6 runs when they knew that it was a boundary? Did they not appeal when they know that the ball didn't carry for a catch? Those sorts of things. And did they take the opportunity to actually govern themselves, to umpire themselves, rather than say, well, you're the umpire, you make all the decisions? And it's a matter of how we play rather than what we play? And did they show respect to not only just the umpires, but their own teammates? Did they show respect to the opposition? And did they make the game more enjoyable and easier for everyone? And if the answer to those questions is all yes, then they deserve 10 out of 10. But if they want to argue, if they want to, be combative, then that's when you start thinking about, well, I didn't really enjoy that game too much because of these players, etc. That's when you start to take some points off.
Yeah, I guess it's a great insight, especially with the game that you mentioned yesterday, how during the Adil Rashid's over that we had seen the New Zealand refuse to take a run. I guess that kind of brand of cricket also has from the captain, from Kane Williamson. He's built that kind of mindset with the New Zealand. One more captain that I guess that comes into mind when we talk about like cool and calm decisions is like MS Dhoni. So you were there with him, interacting with him and umpiring. So how did you feel his captaincy was on the pitch and the brand of cricket that he played?
Well, look, it's always a measure of someone's leadership skills when they're able to stay composed and calm when everyone around them is losing their control and their cool. And MS, for me, when you look at his batting and his ability to chase down runs, he never let the pressure of having to score a lot of runs in a short space of time get the better of him. So he always seemed to have this inner self-belief, this inner confidence, where it was okay, I can still do this, it's all right. And he never seemed to outwardly panic. Now, I'm sure inwardly that he was concerned, that he is panicking a little bit. But if you've done a lot of preparation and you've got a lot of self-belief in what you can do, then it's a matter of keeping that composure, and it's a matter of just relaxing and trusting in yourself that you can do it. So for me, he had this quiet calmness. And of course, think about this. If you're sitting in a lecture theatre and your lecturer is losing control and starting to shout at people and starting to get upset, then what's your view of that lecturer? What's your view of their leadership abilities?
Yeah, it's definitely okay. And I guess how you said with being yourself, like, I guess we've seen that with the brand of cricket that a lot of cricketers have played as well. Like we've seen a lot of unorthodox batting stances that have been throughout the game of cricket to handle their situation. People tend to handle differently. Like one of the best players I remember is Shivnarine Chandrapal with the different batting stance that he had. So with the players getting more and more unorthodox and them also playing unorthodox shots like the switch hit, the reverse, whatever. How are you umpiring those kind of situations? Because I believe Alip Dar has recently come up and said that when there's an unorthodox batter, there sometimes he goes and watches the net session so that he can understand exactly how he's batting, so he can be better prepared for the game. So, did you have those kind of experiences as well?
Yeah, absolutely. A good preparation. Alim's right. Standing in nets and trying to get familiar with what the players are doing and their styles and techniques certainly helps, so that you're not seeing it first time when it actually counts. So it's a bit like that iceberg theory. You only see a little bit of our performance, but behind the scenes, underneath the waterline, there's a hell of a lot of work that goes into understanding what the players are doing, working on our own games, and trying to be ready for when that opportunity comes along to make the right decision. But for me, the unorthodox approaches. So I'll give you an example. So you might remember a bowler for Sri Lanka called Randiv.
Yeah.
Now, he was a very difficult spin bowler, and even Ajantha Mendis in the same category for Sri Lanka was very hard to umpire. And I made some mistakes against these bowlers, particularly because of their bounce and their pace. And for me, I had to go back into the nets and actually work out my technique to make better judgments around ball pitching and ball height and whether that was going over the top of the stumps. And I do that in the nets, absolutely. But when you've got, and I made mistakes like JP Duminy was a guy for South Africa who reverse sweep a lot. Kevin Peterson, same sort of story. You've got AB de Villiers, who was probably, in my view, one of the best naturally talented and gifted cricketers that I've seen every discipline of the game, bowling, batting, keeping, fielding, you name it. But when they do something that's unorthodox, it's distracting, it's different. And remember, I said before, it's about keeping your processes simple and watching the ball and doing those things really well. When you've got someone who's unorthodox, it's a distraction to you. And so your routines and your processes do break down a bit. And that's when you make decision-making errors.
Yeah, it's great to see that, like you said, the iceberg theory, we're able to now see that how even umpires have to go through a lot before the game, and it's just a lot of things that go behind the scenes. I guess moving on to the next thing, we have another fun segment for you. We were speaking about Aleem Dar. So this fun segment is that we've just got some of your umpiring colleagues, and what we want you to do is tell us, suppose if there was a parallel universe, what do you think they would be doing if not for umpiring?
Okay. All right. So there's probably
All right, cool.
answer to it, at least anyway.
Yeah, so again, we've got 6 names for you. The first one being, like we said, talked before, Aleem Dar.
What do I think Aleem would be doing in a parallel universe?
Yeah.
I think Aleem would probably be, well, look, he runs his own cricket academy. So I think he'd be doing something with cricket because he's very passionate. Now, Aleem loves to play, and it was quite unusual. You talked about net practice sessions before. If we were doing a net practice session, chances are at some stage during the net practice session, he would grab a ball and he would practice his spin bowling. So I think Aleem would probably either be a cricketer or he'd be a coach.
Oh, that's great to hear. Okay, so the next one we've got for you is Ian Gould.
Ian Gould. I think Gunnar would be a great person to probably run a pub. He's probably going to be someone who owns a pub, pouring beers, talking to the locals, just being one of the lads in the pub. I think that's what he might be doing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really great to hear then. Another one we've got for you is Billy Bowden.
Billy Bowden would probably be in a circus. He'd be one of the clowns in the circus. He'd be an entertainer. Billy is a great singer. For those of you who don't know, he does a great New Zealand haka. And he is truly a born entertainer. He loves to sing. He loves to entertain. He loves to be the life of the party. So it wouldn't surprise me if Billy ran away with the circus and was one of the clowns here.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. Okay, so the next one we've got for you is Daryl Harper.
Daryl Harper. I think Daryl Harper might be I'd love to read Daryl's book one day. If you've ever wrote a book about his experiences, so I could see him being an author. I could see him being a tour guide, because one of the great things that Daryl taught me about umpiring on the road was really exploring the country that you're in and embracing the culture of the places that you went to. The foods, the language, the local experiences. So I think Daryl would be a wonderful tour guide. But he could also be a comedian too, because he's very funny me.
Oh, that's really good to hear then. Okay, cool. So the next one we've got for you is Kumar Dharmasena.
Kumar Dharmasena. Now, that's a hard one. What could Kumar be? Well, we know Kumar was a great cricketer in himself. He represented,
sure.
There was a World Cup winner. I could see Kumar being a man of big industry, a suit, tie, flashy jewelry, nice car. I could see him being a really successful businessman as well. So he's a very, very shrewd operator. So he could be an entrepreneur, I reckon, Kumar.
Oh, wow, that's really good to hear then. All right, so the last one we got for you is Billy Doctorow.
Billy Doctorow. Well, apart from being known as the president of Dominica, because he's probably one of the biggest exports out of the West Indies, and particularly the island of Dominica. I won't say what I wanted to say because it's probably not Billy. Look, I could see Billy being a restaurateur. Someone who is a maitre d', an owner of a big flashy restaurant. and someone who again likes to look after the guests and to also, wine and dine his guests. Billy, yeah, I could see him doing that. Very funny man, a bit like Billy Bowden, a bit of an entertainer. But I could see, him enjoying that atmosphere of being a restaurateur.
Oh, that's really nice to hear from all the different things the insights that we get from all these other umpires. Okay, cool. So moving on, then the one thing I wanted to ask you is that you've done a lot of umpiring in many tests, ODIs and T20s, like we've seen you throughout the game. So are there any games that you remember, like which is close to your heart, or like one match that you remember in each format where you were thinking that this was a great game to be a part of, or it's just something interesting that happened in the game, whether it's a funny moment or a serious thing that happened, which you think that this is something I remember?
You remember your first test match, your first ODI, all those sorts of things. But in terms of games and series and events, look, a couple stand out for me. Probably the last test I umpired, which was at Lord's, which was England versus South Africa, where both teams were playing for the #1 test position in the world. And it also happened to be Andrew Strauss's last test match at the time. Not for me so much, but because of the occasion and the event, and because they were playing for something, and the atmosphere and etc., that made it special. I think the semi-final 2011 Pakistan versus India in the Harley sort of stands out as an occasion. I did a lot of India versus Pakistan test matches and one days. I remember that 2004 series, so that sort of sticks out in my mind because of the one-day match in Karachi. That was a very high-scoring game. A couple of other test matches, and I think Brenda Sawag scored 300 in a test match in that series in Multan, I think it was. That stands out for me. But for me, I tended to become a little bit disengaged with the games and the players because it was easier for me to then worry about and focus on my job. But occasionally you'll just sit back and you'll say, gee, wow, that was special. And I talked about that Shane Warne game in Adelaide, from an experience perspective, but I try not to get emotionally engaged and involved with the game, because if you do so, it compromises your ability to make decisions objectively. But occasionally you'll sit back and say, gee, that was nice to be part of. I remember Irfan Pathan's hat-trick again in Karachi. India have gone from getting 3 wickets in the first over to losing the test match. Wow.
Exactly. That's always the beauty of the game. It's always unpredictable. So I guess I just have one last question for you would be that what advice would you give to aspiring future umpires? Like you said, now it's spreading towards India with female umpires as well. So what advice do you think you could give to young aspiring umpires watching this right now?
First of all, I'd say be yourself. Don't try to be another umpire. Don't try to be someone else, because everybody else is taken. So it's really important to be who you are and to work really hard at what you do. So you make your own luck to a certain extent. So hard work is a part of that. The third piece of advice I'd give is about self-discipline. The difference between good and great is about doing the simple things to an excellent standard all of the time. And that discipline is built on a foundation of process. So focus on the process of hard work, practice, routines, the right attitude, learning from your mistakes. Make as many mistakes as you can at the lowest level. Umpiring is all about mistakes, and try to make sure that you don't make the same mistake twice. And realise that excellence has no finish line. That we are all a work in progress, and if you do all of those things that I've just talked about, of course, if we had more time, we'd expand upon those and tease them out a bit more. But if I looked at those pieces of advice and put them all together and said, if you do all those things, you're giving yourself the best opportunity. But at the end of the day, whether you get selected or not, it's not up to you. It's up to someone else. So it's about focusing on what you can do and not worrying about the uncontrollables. I see far too many people start out umpiring and want to be a test umpire next year. It doesn't work that way. It's about patience. And patience doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing everything that I've just said and being ready for when that opportunity comes along, if it comes along.
Yeah, I think that's some great piece of advice for all the aspiring umpires getting here. Also for all of us, I think it's a great life advice as well, as students as well. So yes, I would like to thank you for taking the time to have this talk. It was a huge honor and been a wonderful time sharing all these experiences with you. And we've definitely had a wonderful time. So once again, I would just like to thank Radio Mirchi, our entertaining partner, and NoFS, our online listening partner. I'd also like to remind the audience that the donation link is also still there in the comments box as well as the description. So please contribute as much as you can. There's also a feedback form in the description box. So please do give your feedback on how it's going. Once again, thank you very much, sir. And yeah.
Why wake up when the world sleeps? Every single day. Why train alone? Why do the same thing? Again and again. Lap after lap. Day in, day out. Why jump? Why glide? Why slide? Why fall? Why get back up? Why lose? Why win? Why do it? Because if it gets your heart racing, it's worth doing. TVS Racing, engineering goosebumps since 1982.
Winning is about finding the perfect racing line with your eyes closed. Making split-second decisions based on instinct. TVS Apache RR310 with ride modes and smart connect. Crafted to overcome, crafted to outperform.
My daddy is my best friend. He plays with me all the time. But a while back, he couldn't play with me at all. He was sick. Mama told me, "Don't worry, baby. Papa is being cared by the best doctors." Doctor uncle was very sweet. He told me that he was going to give a bigger space in my papa's heart to love me. The nurses over there made Papa smile all the time. One day, they took Papa to a room. Like in Ben 10, there were very big machines. Mama said that Papa will be back home very soon. And in 2 days, Papa was alright. I love you, Daddy.
Some things in life are beyond value. Love, care, and your heart. Apollo Hospitals. Because your heart is priceless.